Hello and welcome to the Cannes Parallel Challenge 2024. My name is Arnaud.
And my name is Matt, and we're going to be your hosts for the next week and a half as we dive into the filmographies of all of the directors selected in competition at Cannes. But we're also going to be a two-person jury judging the works of these filmmakers to decide our own Palme d'Or.
Yes, so for anyone uninitiated, the Cannes Parallel Challenge runs parallel to the festival. As we hear about the new films from celebrated filmmakers make their way onto the Croisette, Matt and I will be watching an equivalent film for every film in the prestigious competition program. Usually, these are films from the same director who have premiered at Cannes, but it's a case-by-case basis.
And once we've watched all of these films, we're going to deliberate to find the best way to reward Palme, the Grand Prix, director, screenplay, to create our own unique list based off of the films that we're watching. You can check the link to our Letterboxd lists down in the description, but definitely stay tuned over the next few weeks as we're going to be discussing the works of filmmakers like Yorgos Lanthimos, Andrea Arnold, David Cronenberg, and Francis Ford Coppola, as well as many, many more.
So now, Matt, I'd like to ask you, looking at this year's lineup, what are you most interested or looking forward to?
Well, this is a special question this year because I'm actually going to Cannes. And something that's really important to me is I don't want to be that North American film goer that goes to Cannes and says, oh, I'm only looking forward to Furiosa. I'd say the two that I'm most looking forward to are Bird by Andrea Arnold and All We Imagine Is Light by Payal Kapadia. But honestly, I'm just looking forward to everything. I am open to being surprised. What about yourself?
I would agree that Kapadia is one of the films I'm most looking forward to. There's also the Gilles Lelouch film that I'm really intrigued by, given how it is 3 hours and apparently some kind of ultra-violent giallo romantic musical.
What?
So I don't know what that's about, but I'm very curious to see what it ultimately is.
With that said, the second act is the opening film of the Cannes Film Festival this year, and it's programmed out of competition, which means that we're not going to consider this parallel film for prizes. We're just watching this as a fun way to start off the challenge.
So let's talk about Quentin Dupieux. Dupieux is one of those directors who has had a very specific and easy to spot style. His films are usually comedies dealing with absurd situations, offbeat characters, and bright, open environments. Dupieux actually started as a musician making electronic music under the pseudonym Monsieur Oiseau, Mr. Oiseau, which means Mr. Bird, but misspelled with a Z.
How quirky.
His first success as a filmmaker was the film Rubber, the tale of a sentient car tire who goes on a killing spree.
I remember I rented Rubber with a bunch of friends when I was in the 8th grade. That was a wild experience.
After having lived his American film experience, as he puts it, he goes back to France to continue developing his style. And so since 2018, he's made on average more than a film a year, all with short runtimes, impressive casts, and for the most part, very good return on investments given how low budget his films are. We decided to go with Reality from 2014, now 10 years ago. We have collectively seen 7 of his films already, and this was probably the most notable one that we had not watched yet.
Reality is a surrealist comedy which takes a lot of cues from the work of Louis Buñuel, and despite a lot of the film being in the French language, Reality is set in Hollywood, and it follows an aspiring filmmaker who seeks to get funding for his new film about television sets coming alive and killing people by making their insides explode. In order to get the funding from a rich producer, this director must find the perfect groan of pain, a groan of pain so authentic and so raw that it can win an Oscar. We also follow a young girl who finds a mysterious videotape inside the stomach of a wild hog, as well as a TV presenter who suddenly begins to develop a very, very itchy skin. And while this is a satire of Hollywood's self-importance, it also takes a lot of cues from puzzle box films. Films where the pieces don't feel like they quite fit together until the very end of the movie, where everything starts to click.
And frankly, by the end, I don't necessarily think things click, and honestly, I don't care.
It feels like it's kind of making fun of that type of movie, where where at the end you're meant to go, oh, I get it now. Oh, I'm so smart.
Oh, for sure. I think what you'll immediately get after seeing Reality is that the last 10 to 15 minutes are absolutely bonkers, wild. I think it's almost like a spoof of a David Lynch film, where David Lynch is a weird person, and so when he does these puzzle box films, it works because it's just so weirdly fascinating. If almost anybody else tries to do a puzzle box films, it just comes out as a bunch of empty symbolism or as pretentious. And Quentin Dupieux uses a bunch of ideas he's amassed, puts them all onto this film, manages to find some kind of semblance of structure out of it, and then ultimately makes this wacko, ridiculous puzzle box that makes absolutely no sense, and he's just having fun with it. There's a clear pleasure that's derived from Quentin Dupieux, and that I think is translated onto the audience here.
I think it's kind of fun to look at this in opposition to David Lynch's films, because David Lynch always talks about catching the big fish, letting ideas ruminate until you find one that's just perfect. And a lot of the time it comes from the subconscious. And the thing that I really like about Dupieux through his entire filmography, he makes films quick and he makes them without a sense of inhibition. And so while David Lynch sits there waiting to catch the big fish, it seems like Dupieux is very content to just show us all of the fish that he caught. And that's how I feel about all of these movies. They're a stream of consciousness that we get to see on the screen, and that gives them so much joy, so much energy. It might be a little bit undercooked, but it's not trying to be much more than that.
I do agree with your sentiment, especially in regards to Dupieux's overall filmography. What you usually see about his works is that they're usually films that are under 90 minutes, have these massive ensemble casts, are usually used for one sketch, one big joke, and so his films can often feel like ideas you might be talking to a friend about, like, oh, wouldn't it be silly if this happened? But he's never really the type of guy to really dive deep and make something thematically rich, for better or for worse. And I think actually Reality is one of his few films that to me feels somewhat like a complete package. Alain Chabat trying to find the right groan is just such a ridiculous situation, especially since you never buy this film producer as being a real film producer, Alain Chabat as being a real filmmaker, and especially when you get to that conclusion, it is so hilariously unsatisfying.
I think my favorite bit of that is when he's in the gym, just like standing near people with a recording device, trying to like hear them as they grunt as they lift weights. Incredibly funny. And that's what you get out of all of Dupieux's films.
The second act, or le deuxième acte, stars Vincent Lindon, Louis Garrel, and Léa Seydoux, who are new to Dupieux's ever-growing cast of recurring actors. But Raphaël Quenard does return from last year's Yannick. We have a set of 4 characters who each have a strange or awkward relationship with each other's. All 4 stop in the middle of nowhere at a pit stop called the second act. From there, Dupieux is keeping a secret right now about what will happen there, but based on the title of the restaurant, we may be dealing with a very meta character play where reality and act is blurred. That's my guess anyways, but as is tradition for the opening film at Cannes, the film will open in France nationwide on the same day as the world premiere, so we'll hear about this one very soon.
This is our opening ceremony. Let's start this off by giving our first prediction for what the Cannes Palme d'Or will be this year.
I'm looking at the Von Horn film, The Girl with the Needle, and I'm looking at the Kapadia film, which is the first Indian film to be in competition since 1994. These are the 2 films that are really standing out based on their plot descriptions and their director profiles. The way they are jumping into competition makes them very interesting and appealing. Think how Ruben Östlund broke out and won the Palme d'Or with The Square in 2017.
On the other hand, I'm leaning towards Bird at this point. I have a lot of faith in Andrea Arnold. She has won 3 jury prizes at this point and has yet to win a Palme, and I think Greta Gerwig's jury is likely to go for her. All We Imagine Is Light would be my second choice. There has to be a reason why this film is in competition. I'm not as confident in The Girl with the Needle as you are, but last year you were saying Anatomy Anatomy of a Fall is going to be the big shocker of the festival, while I was saying, oh, it's probably just another French filler movie that's here because they have to fill a quota.
Well, I guess we'll see how these turn out pretty soon. In the next episode, and our first one diving into the competition, we'll be looking at first-time filmmaker Agathe Ridinger's Waiting for Jupiter and her new film, Wild Diamond.
So come discover this exciting new voice in filmmaking with us.